All right, guys, welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. This is Blood Money episode 273, actually, with ROCKNE EARLES. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well today. How you doing, Bam?
Good, good. For the viewers out there, allow me a second to set this up. We're obviously here inside a location where we haven't done an episode from very recently. This is essentially a location in Washington, D.C., because we're out here with a large group of people for the inauguration, and some of us stayed back here because there's a lot of news and a lot of things happening in D.C., like the release of all the J6 hostages, which are subject today. ROCKNE is one of the J6 prisoners. So he is going to tell us, or I should actually say J6 hostages, because that's what they were. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself and some of his personal experiences of what happened after he was arrested. So ROCKNE, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Awesome, sir. So dive us right into, how, tell us your story about who you are and when you were arrested, and most importantly, what happened once you got to prison. I think you have some very interesting facts to tell us. So dive right in.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say that not all of the hostages have been released yet. I believe there's still 10 of them that are incarcerated for various reasons of state charges, or in some cases, the judges have just, and a couple of them have refused to sign off on the dismissal orders. And they've been scattered around the country at various county jails, and they're still trying to track them. The advocates are out there working on that. Now we'll go back to what you just asked me. My background is I grew up in North Dakota, and that's where I went to high school and college, and I had a military career for 10 years or so, and done various things in my life. When I got out, I was owned a lodge in Wyoming for 12 years, and I moved back to North Dakota to take care of my father, who was aging. He was 80, and he was a widower and all of that. And that's where I was when I went to the January 6th rally. And I won't get into the reasons we went there. We all went for good reasons in my mind, and for a stolen election. Ended up in the middle of a Fedsurrection to cover up that stolen election. And if you just want me to get to the meat of it, what happened with me is, knowing when we left that day, we left probably 4 p.m. I don't remember for sure. We were on a train heading up to Bethesda, where we had a hotel room. And looking already at the news as it was being portrayed, they were building a narrative from day one. I mean, from the first minute. They were showing this violent insurrection, this thing that was going, trying to take over the Capitol and, to topple the government and all of that. And, couldn't have been further from the truth, but I knew then that it was going to be trouble. And so just I kept my head down, and I never even went to the FBI site. I had no idea it was ever on it, never have been on it. And but for some other reasons, I mean, I stayed in North Dakota until the summer of 2022, but for health reasons for my youngest daughter. We moved to New Mexico to get away from all the chemicals that are used in the agricultural industry in North Dakota. And that's where I was when the feds came a knocking. And I will say, at least I was grateful that they held off for because my daughter spent many months, and we went through a long summer of 2022 at Children's Hospital in Denver. And wow. They didn't show up then. We sold the farm, and we had the auction. We did the move, and I think I made 8 trips to New Mexico with trailers and moving trucks to get all of my stuff moved off the farm. Got settled in, and then it was a Tuesday after Easter, the 11th of April. I showed up at the post office to check my mail, and was met by a barrage of FBI agents who arrested me, and then took me out to the house, where there was an entire army of them. As they told me, I asked them, and I think my wife did too. She asked them. They said there was either 40 or 45 agents there at my house.
Are you serious? 45 agents? Wow.
Yes, yes. And they were armed. When I was sitting and they first pulled up, I'm still sitting in their vehicle, and I saw the guys coming out of the trees, snipers, guys in tactical camo and ARs, and they had long guns too, not just ARs, but long guns. And it was just like a complete clown show. It's like, come on, there's me and my wife, 12-year-old, 4-year-old, and my sister, who was at 67 or 68 at the time. And and this small army shows up. And so they ransacked the house, and they took me away, obviously, to San Juan County jail in Farmington, New Mexico, where I spent a day and a half until I was arraigned out and released on pretrial conditions, which itself was interesting, being it was whatever the premise for arresting me had nothing to do with drugs or alcohol or anything else. Over the next 12 months, I did 40 urinalysis. And I had to go to Taos, New Mexico for those. I had to drive 200 plus miles round trip, 40 times. And to make sure that I was.
It seems like they're trying to use the process to basically torture you. I mean, that's
they did. Anywhere they could abuse you, make your life more miserable, make it so you couldn't have any kind of employment or any kind of a normal life. Yeah, that was it. I'd call in every morning.
That's the one thing I noticed, Rockney, and this is more for the viewers. I mean, with my nonsense, that now the whole world knows, I was like, for 5 hours, I was like, apprehended basically. And even in those 5 hours, like the way they treat you in that, it's like they steal from you. You're actually losing your dignity, your kind of just normality. I mean, there's a lot of things being taken from you in those moments that they don't necessarily quantify. And what you're talking about, is a part of that.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. They just and so many different aspects and different approaches to you as a person, your liberties, your freedoms. Yeah, and that's even when I was out pre-trial. And that was like 17 months of pre-trial release. It was a constant. Of course, the monthly report to my parole officer that had to put down all of my financials every freaking month and all my vehicles and how many miles I drove, and you had this long report I had to send in every month. And just like I said, it's kind of ridiculous. And but anyway, that's what it was. And then, of course, going through the process with my lawyer of that when I don't know exactly when they set the trial date. It was last summer sometime, and they set a trial date for October 15th. I was wanting to get them to push it back, of course, past the inauguration, with any luck at all. Because so many people had pushed their trials for like 2, 3, 4 years, and they were trying to get mine in there pretty quick. It seemed like, and then it came down to I took my son to back to North Dakota in August for him to start school his freshman year in college. And while I was up there, my lawyer got a hold of me. I had literally about 36 hours to make a decision on a plea deal they offered me. And they'd offered me several, which they were just all a joke because it's all the charges with all kinds of provisos that were just ridiculous. And so on this one, they finally said they drop all charges except for 2 assaults. And one was a questionable video of me throwing a water bottle. And the thing is, this person, whoever it was that threw this water bottle, threw it like a major league pitch. Unbeknownst to these buttheads that work for the feds, I've had a shoulder replacement. I can't throw. I coached my son's little league for a couple, 3 years. I've never thrown a pitch. I can't play catch overhand.
Wow.
So they have this video of this guy just throwing this water bottle like a fastball. And of course, I was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, which was the water bottle. And but they dropped the deadly weapons. And if I would just take the 2 assault charges, and of course, everybody knows, go to trial, you'll get obstruction of justice. They'll get you for perjury for lying on the stand. If you go on the stand in your own defense and lose, that's considered lying, 3 points. Obstruction, 2 points. Not taking responsibility and responsibility for your actions and having contrition, 2 points. They just keep adding on the enhancements. Or you can take the plea and they promise this, that, and the other thing. And so, on the chance that President Trump did not win the election, we caught a pardon. I had to think about the future, and I wasn't going to win. Nobody's going to win in that court. I had Judge Reggie Walton, who got up on CNN and basically called Donald Trump a liar, a narcissist, a sore loser, and a child, and all of his followers and all the defendants were guilty. He said it on CNN. This is my judge. So I know I have zero chance in the courtroom of winning a trial. So I might as well take the plea and take it from there. And part of the plea deal was the government did not seek to detain me until sentencing. So the 20th of September, I show up in D.C. and I show up in Judge Walton's court. And of course, he did not honor the do not seek to detain me. he remanded me into custody and threw me into the DC gulag for 4 months and a couple extra days. And yeah, so that's how I ended up in the gulag. By
That
the way,
is,
that was my daughter's 14th birthday. I was supposed to fly back out that night to be with my daughter. Didn't happen.
I mean, how is this like? This is what I hear is honestly, this sounds like people using their positions for terrorism. I mean, this is terrorizing people for
Well,
nothing.
it's what they do with the entire legal system, though. You know, I told you about my cellie, and we'll go into that's a different time. But they arrest people, overcharge them, put them in pre-trial, and then they will take 4 or 5 years pre-trial as they drib your own. Like for this particular guy, he's a businessman. All his records are what the evidence they're using against him, which he says are the records that will exonerate him, but he can't have them. They've locked up his cloud. They've taken all his devices, his computer, laptop, iPads, everything, and he's sitting incarcerated, going on 6 months. It'll probably be 6 years unless he takes a plea deal.
Wow,
But,
wow.
and that's what they'll do. That's why they have a 100% conviction rate, because they throw you in and leave you there till you rot, and they play that game, and you will sit there as long as they want you to, or until you take a plea deal.
Tell me a little bit more about like now you're ultimately apprehended. Was the fact that you had moved states made it easier to apprehend you? That's why they apprehended you, or
Oh
you
no,
didn't?
not at all, not at all. They had me identified, I believe, June or July of 2021. And
Mm-hmm.
why? I mean, I think positively identified. They're probably trying to work on putting together what evidence they were going to get, which I had to laugh at. A lot of their evidence they showed me, the first discovery was like it was a multiple page. It was my Zillow listing of my farm as I was trying to sell it, which I thought was hilarious. They did a lot of real great investigative work there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I think the biggest reason they didn't take me right away was they didn't have the money. It wasn't until Mitch McConnell cut an omnibus deal with the Democrats late in 2022, right before the end of that particular congressional session, when the Democrats still had the House, and they earmarked a couple $100 million specifically. It might have even been way more. It might have been a billion or two. A lot of money specifically for the DOJ to go after J6, because it was after that bill passed, they went on steroids arresting people.
Wow.
And that would have been probably October, November, something, December of 2022, as that that particular Congress closed out. And then of course they came and got me April, and they were arresting people wholesale from then on till just days before the inauguration. They arrested, the last one I think arrested was a 75-year-old grandmother.
So sick. I mean, these people are absolutely out of their minds. Now, tell me, a lot. It sounds like hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions, to prosecute and terrorize Americans. Tell me a little bit about, did they spend any of that money on the prisons where you're staying at? How was that? Tell me a little about those.
Well, it's DC. The Gulag itself is a DC jail. It's basically like a county jail because it's not federal. That is a jail for the District of Columbia. Uh, don't know even really where to start on this because there's so many different levels and so many different areas of the jail itself. But what I will say, there's a whole lack of, don't give a crap by the jail staff. Not so much even like the guards. There's plenty of it with the guards, the COs, correction officers. But with the management, if you want to call it that, the white shirts, the hierarchy, the lieutenants and captains up to the vice wardens and whatever, to change any of the conditions in there. And I can only tell you from my point of view, from what I saw, from when I went in intake, which everybody goes to intake on the first floor. My first 7 days, or that's how long you're usually in intake before they put you into a cell block, into a pod. And my cell was half flooded with water. I had no water to drink. They were turned off for the first couple 3 days. I had plenty of pets, so I had mice and cockroaches, and it was pretty much just a nasty little cell. And of course, I got put in on a Thursday, and wasn't let out till Monday because you're not going to get rec over the weekend in intake. So for the first 3 days, I sat in there, and luckily I saw a book by D.L. Moody, a post-Civil War evangelist, and it was sitting in the intake where we're being fingerprinted and doing all that. And I just happened I grabbed it. I stole it. Sorry, I said it. I borrowed it, took it to my cell. It's still there somewhere if they want it back. But I read that like 3 times that weekend. I had nothing else to read. and I'm a
Hmm.
Christian anyway, and it was great reading. But other than that, then, it was just, they put me in what they call Southeast 3. It's the Southeast quadrant, third floor, which is, there's two sides, basically. There's two long corridors. There's 40 cells on the side, 20 on the top tier, 20 on the bottom tier. So a total of 80 cells, on the average, about 150 inmates in there. Never totally full because the guys in and out, fluxing, going federal, going home, going whatever, new guys coming in. Uh, what I'll say about that is one of the biggest things, is there's nothing to do. It's a jail. It's not a prison, so they don't really care much about programs, any kind of rehabilitative programs, anything to keep you occupied, as far as prisoners go. And some guys are in there. One guy who was on the detail, like the head of the detail. It's like the prisoners' trustees. They call them detail because they're the ones that do all the work, bring out our food, the trays and all this and that. He's been there 7 years pre-trial.
Like no trial, like
No trial.
that
I
is
mean,
just insane. I mean,
he
they
goes
have
to
like that.
he
I
has
mean,
court hearings and things of
yeah.
that nature, and he has the status hearings. And I think he finally took a plea deal because his was a murder charge. I don't want to say too much, but I think his was a murder charge. And they finally, after 7 years, yeah. And that's not really. There's a lot of guys in there have been there for 5 years.
Wow, wow. Wow. Absolute disregard for the Constitution. I mean, tell us a little bit more about like, the realities of like living in prison and jail.
Well, basically it's what was it, a 12-by-6 cell, 10-by-6 cell, something like that, and two bunks, not a lot of room. You have a cellie, and uh, our rec time, it alternated between morning rec and evening rec. I mean, just you had, because there's two sides of our block or our pod. You were out at one morning 9:30 till 2, but no, 9:30 to 2:30. Excuse me, because it's 5 hours. And if you went out in the evening, you went out at from 5 to 10. Unless there were short guards and you got modified, then they only let off one tier at a time. You got 2.5 hours out. Uh, I saw sunlight for 3 hours in 4 months. We're supposed to have outdoor rec once a week. We got it 3 times in 4 months. And that's, it's kind of inhumane in that regard alone. In fact, the rec time we had was not enough just to
Hmm.
be, otherwise you're spending, 19 hours in your cell a day. Now we had lockdowns. If there's any violence, right away they lock you down. You might be locked down for a day or two. If there's a stabbing, which there were stabbings on throughout anywhere in the jail, you got locked down for usually about 4 days. We had a stabbing in the cell right next to me. I witnessed it on the 20th of December. Uh, and we were
Wow.
locked down for 4 days right up through Christmas Eve. Now,
Wow.
what's important about those lockdowns is starting in about the first part of
ROCKNE, could
November.
you adjust your phone because it's we're losing sight of your face. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I
No
just
worries.
let
No
it
worries.
dip a little bit.
No
Anyway,
worries.
these lockdowns are, I say they're not, why they're so significant at that time. I mean, they suck regardless because you're locked in there for, we're at 96 hours, and they just, shove your meal through a tray, or your tray through a slot in the door, and we, our particular side where I was for 3 months, 3+ months, has it in the wall, our wall of our cell was on the inside corridor, and we're on the third floor, so heat rises. Starting about this, probably the second week of November, when they turned the heat on, as it got cold downstairs, they turned the heat on in the admin area or the lower cells. We were running at anywhere between probably upper 80s to 95 degrees in our cell, and it was torture.
Wow.
If it wasn't for the J6, Telegram channel and putting out calls to action to people like Marie Goodwin and Angie Bosek and these people that would muster up dozens, if not a couple of hundred people to inundate the jail with calls. And what they would do is they would probably turn the heat off, maybe open up vents, cool it down for a day or two, and then crank the heat right back up. In that particular period, over from the 20th of December until Christmas Day, basically, we were locked in there for 4 days. I literally thought, now you have to, my background is I was in special forces. I've done a lot of, pretty physical things in my life. I've been very uncomfortable in my life, and I've experienced some hardships and adversities. I literally thought I was going to die in my cell by about the 27th or 28th of December because the heat was so high. We didn't have cold water in our cells either. We only had hot water in our cell, no matter how many times we asked them to fix it. And I would just sit on a stack of books in my mattress next to the tray slot with my face up. They're trying to catch fresh air from the fans. And that's when, on the 27th, my cellmate, who was a J6er, who was partially paralyzed, he's a recovering quadriplegic who walks in with impairment. He's rehabilitated himself greatly. Was finally pulled out of our cell because the heat was causing his body to break down. He was starting to go to experience paralysis again. And again, it was the J6 action committees, if you want to call it that put out the call to action that inundated the jail with calls saying, basically, probably the only thing they cared about was, he's going to die or become paralyzed, and we're going to sue you to the wall. And they probably said, oh, maybe we should do something then. So they finally pulled Ryan out, and I got my Russian cellmate, who spent one night in there and said, you're going to die. He goes, I can't take the heat. And he looked at me and said, you're probably dying. You're literally dying. So the next day, he forced the issue and drugged me over to a cell on the other side that was probably about 60 to 65 degrees.
Wow.
And I'll say this, I think he saved my life.
Wow. I mean, how does something like that happen?
One sympathetic guard that I had talked to on our wreck that day. And then Dennis, because they actually, the two gals from New York City, two Chinese gals that are great Trump supporters, called me on a video call in between the wrecks. And so I was the only inmate out on the video call. When I went back up to our cell, they opened the door and he'd already made some inroads with the guards. As soon as the door opened up, he had his stuff packed and he just boogied over to the other side, dropped the stuff in front of the cell door. They opened it. And then he came and helped me get all my stuff out.
Wow.
And so, then the last, that was the 28th of December, and I was there till the 21st. So the last, 3.5 weeks, I actually lived like I knew I was going to probably make it. But seriously, the heat was so bad in that cell, I think I would have expired. I was sick for 2-3 days in that cell when we finally got out of it. Just my body was breaking down from the heat. We would they come by once a day, usually in the evening, with one of those large round igloo coolers for dispensing water to be full of ice. And that would be enough for 40 cells. So, yeah, not enough, but that's what they had for 40 cells. We would get as much ice as we could. We put it in the Ziploc bags that our instant coffee came in, and we'd literally pack it around our groin and our armpits in those areas to cool down our body, enough so we could probably get 3-4 hours of miserable sleep, or maybe 2-3 hours of miserable sleep. Or we'd hug our stainless steel toilet, put a towel over it so you could rest your face on the towel so your face wasn't over the toilet itself, and you flush it, the cold water, to make the stainless steel toilet cold.
Wow.
And you drop your body around it trying to cool your body down.
Wow. I mean, let me ask you something about... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Did you find that there were guards there doing things to intentionally cause you pain and suffering because of your politics and because of their politics?
Nope. I'll say absolutely not. Not in our cell level. Not on the actual guards that were in our pod. Most of them were Haitians or probably West Africans. It's hard. I know a couple are Haitians that I talked to them. One guy actually told him when I was the night Trump signed the pardons, I called him over to my slot and I just told him, I said, you've been very fair. I appreciated your approach to the prisoners. And he was very pleased with that. We had some of those guys you had a good relationship with. They knew us, especially the J6ers, were always, we treated them with respect. We're respectful. They treated us one way, we treated them back the same way. Anything that probably came up higher. And I would say we did not go through the same hate that the early J6ers did that were put there in 2021. When the narrative was fresh and new that they were a bunch of racist Trump supporters. I mean, the prisoners hated them, the guards hated them, the administration at the jail hated them, and they paid a price. For us, it was different. It was more indifference to the jail itself that caused, the hardships that we faced. Because what I faced, all the inmates faced. It wasn't directed at us J6ers. The jail overall just sucks. It's broken.
Well, I mean, what's your feeling now that you're finally out? Trump's back in office. I mean, explain, where are you at emotionally? Where do you think the country is going? You think, was this all worth it? I mean, what's your thoughts on all that?
That's a whole lot of a question there. For one, I think the country's in a much better place now. He's done more in 4 or 5 days than most Republican presidents did in 8 years. The man was given a mandate. He also has the experience of his first administration and all the snakes in Washington. He's not going to worry about reelection. He's just going to worry about fixing the country. The man is altruistic. He's not done this for fame and glory. He had that. He's not doing it for fame or fortune. He had that. He's been attacked, vilified, impeached twice, 91 indictments, 5 civil lawsuits, 2 assassination attempts. He's doing it for us. He always said, they're coming after me to get to you. Well, you know what? They went after the J6ers to get to him, to try to keep him off the ballot, or to try to ruin his career, his chances of being reelected, and keeping the insurrection narrative alive. And I think right now, where am I at? Was it worth it? I got him back in office. Maybe it's worth it that way. We didn't do what we did on J6. I went there because he was speaking, and there was a process to actually address the questions about the election, which was, I believe it's 3 congressmen and 1 senator have to object to the certification of the Electoral College. And we had 140 Republican congressmen and I believe 12 senators were going to file their petitions to complain or whatever to object to the certification of the Electoral College. And then Vice President Pence would have had the option to send it back down, which he said he was going to do. He had hinted he was going to do it until that day when he said he wouldn't. That's why we were there. We also went to the Capitol because Stephen Sund, the then Capitol chief of police, had signed 6 additional speaking permits, public permits for speaking events around the Capitol. I have a copy of those, every one of those permits that were signed. I also have a copy of the overlay of where the speakers were supposed to be that day. And if you put that overlay on where they had the restricted areas, that dog won't hunt because you couldn't have got to those speaking areas. Anybody going to those speaking areas was going across restricted grounds that weren't marked because the fences were taken down earlier by, well, anybody's guess, although some people were filmed doing it. They don't know who really took the fences down and all the signs. There was very little signage. None when we got there. There's no signage at all saying this is restricted grounds. But we were going there to see, I want to see Simone Gold speak. And there was a couple other speakers, Roger Stone, maybe, whatever. There's 6 to choose from, 6 different speaking stages, supposedly. But as we approached the Capitol, we heard flashbangs and saw people bloodied up and people that had been gassed and sprayed. And, and then this one thing, curiosity killed the cat. I went forward to see what the hell's going on.
I mean, right now you're kind of couching that as curiosity killed the cat, but that's kind of part of our right to walk into our house.
Well, I just went forward to see what was going on, and one thing led to another. Truly is what it was. And yeah, it's our house, and yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about that right now. As far as because I can't really tell you what my motives were at that point. I do know that people were hurt. That's one reason I went forward. I saw people that were bleeding, and I just remember one couple going past me in a rapid fashion, pushing a double stroller with toddlers in it. As the tear gas was starting to waft over us, and I'm not going to totally blame the cops for the overreaction attack in the crowd because they were set up. That was a national special security event. That is what they declare whenever there's going to be a large gathering in DC for any event. And when you have the president speaking to they expected 1 million people. I think they said there was 3.3 million people there based off of cell phone pings, off of cell phone data they got from all the companies. So with that being in mind, they should have known that this is a national special security event. It should have been declared, which when they do that, that's what they did for the inauguration. So they do for all the big events in DC. Every law enforcement agency is 100% manned. Metro Police, Capitol Hill Police, Secret Service, Park Police, you name it. Everybody is on call and standby, plus National Guard. None of that happened that day. They were inviting trouble. They wanted trouble. They wanted it to happen. And it did. Unbeknownst to the rest of us, we should have been able to, somebody should have been able to pick it out that this was what was going to happen, and it did happen. But, it's easy to say now in hindsight, but you look at it and say, it was a setup.
What?
Without a doubt, it was entrapment. And the cops were caught on that too, because those that were on there were on. I mean, they're looking at, I can about imagine their fear, especially once they started firing off. And it wasn't the front line guys; it was people standing behind them. It was the lieutenants and basically the shift leaders that were firing the flashbangs into the crowd. Now you've got a crowd that's, say, 50 people deep, and you throw a flashbang in the middle of it. The back half goes back away from the flashbangs. The front half surges forward because flashbangs are going off behind them, while forward is right into the police line. Instant confrontation. So why were they throwing the flashbangs the way they did? That's what really caused the blow up. And there are even cops on tape. You can find the tape everywhere. They're saying, for every one of those you throw, you're pissing off a dozen people, or more than that. But that's what, to paraphrase what the one police officer said. He's just like, no, stop throwing them. Stop throwing them. They just kept on throwing them. So the guys in the front line, and they're just like, one of the guys said, we're set up like mother effers,
You said it in that moment?
Oh, yeah, that's on video, too. One famous video. I mean, I've watched so much video, but he's like, we're set up like mother. We ain't got nothing. Nobody here. What gear wasn't passed out. Nobody was told it was going to, they just were set up. So I felt sorry for the cops. I mean, even looking back at it, some acted very badly. I don't feel, you know what I mean? There's some that acted way badly, obviously shooting an unarmed woman and beating others to death. But for the most part, I mean, those guys were like, they saw this mass of people coming, and they're like, well, are they friendly or not? Well, they were friendly till they threw flashbangs. And then things got a little crazy. Even then, most of the people weren't getting that violent. They weren't. Most people were just unaware what was going on at different points. It's a huge building. And there's 1,000 different point of views from depending on where you were. Lower West Terrace, Upper West Terrace, East Side. Everybody had a different perspective of what went on that day. Some people saw zero violence because they maybe came in a side door. They just saw a lot of people chanting flags, singing songs, chanting. So everybody's point of view is different.
Yeah, man, this is really good information. Now, tell me, like, is in terms of the things that you saw happening within prison, do you think that there's a fix for that? Do you think that I mean, is there a fix for all these issues that we have? Because you're talking about systemic issues of how people are treated within prison, especially, people like you guys that don't even belong there.
Oh, I mean, there's got to be change. How they do that, I don't exactly know. I mean, it's not really my bailiwick, my area of expertise. But I look at just the overall sentencing, and maybe even what these guys are being arrested for. So many of them are in there for drugs. Well, good God, just decriminalize weed for one. A lot of them are in there because they got caught with a gun. Well, in D.C., that's a no-go right from the get-go, because D.C. has such harsh gun laws. And if they had drugs on them and a gun, well, double that up and times it by 3, and now they're going to get a long sentence. You know what I mean? It's just, you look at what they're being incarcerated for, and does the length of the sentence really equal the crime? You know what I think? I hate white collar crime. I think crimes on Capitol Hill should be just as freaking harsh, if not harsher, because those are people in power. It's like you ministers teaching false scripture. You've got people in power making the laws, breaking all the laws.
Yep. Like they
and you got these people at the bottom of the bottom of the feeding, the food chain, and they're just getting hammered. And going about the prison, I mean, I talk about rec time. We'll just talk about everything in the prison is broke. Mail is broke. My wife tried to send me books there. She probably, mailed me 24 books. I got 7. The rest were actually sent back from the jail to Amazon. For what reasons, we don't know. They're too lazy to deliver them, don't want to deliver them. Outgoing mail does not go out either. I know that my Russian Selly, who's got a wife and children, has mailed out many a letter and envelopes and drawings he made, and nothing has got there in 2 months. It's just about any way they can hurt a prisoner. Sometimes it seems like that's what they'll do.
I mean, I heard stuff about like every time people would get cereal, there'd be like rat droppings in there, and just disgusting sounding things like drinking from the toilet. I mean, could you give some information on that? Is that like unusual things, or is that just the way it is over there?
I wouldn't say they're not drink. I mean, maybe they did from the toilet if they didn't have water. They had to wait long enough. I mean, I had to wait. I think it was 2 days for them to turn the water on in my cell, and they give you drink, Kool-Aid, whatever Kool-Aid packet for your meals, but you don't have a cup. You had to beg for a cup, and it was like third or fourth day there. I saw my case manager, and she had a whole stack of cups in her office, and I'm like, could I possibly have one of those? And it was like giving, she's pulling hen's teeth out or whatever, pulling your own eye teeth to give me a cup. But I did get a cup. But yeah, there's a lot of lack of resources. Put it that way. The resources are probably there, but they're just not meted out. Laundry supposed to happen once a week. Well, that's a crapshoot. It's once a week, but maybe if they announce it when they show up, it's always a different day. And if your side is out, maybe you get it. If you're one that's not out on rec that time, you probably don't catch. Everybody's washed their own laundry. What it came down to. I mean, a lot of people turned it in, but a lot of people just wash their own. Take it in the shower with you and wash your laundry in the shower. Hang it out the best you could. Same with exchange of your sheets and or towels. I mean, my first towels I had them for 2 months. Just wash those too. I actually bought some on commissary, so to have a clean towel to rotate in. But yeah, it's just it's there's just a lot of little things. I mean, were they really the horrible things? There's some of that. Well, let me go back. Okay, Southeast 3, the one side I was on, is where they put the overflow from the mental block. And we had guys over there that should not have been there. I'm going to just give one instance. And it's the one that it broke my heart. I actually had my wife in tears on the phone. It's 36 cell. One of the inmates said, when they were doing a room inspection, panicked and flushed his shank down the drain, down the toilet. His knife, homemade knife. Well, it went down to the first elbow, got stuck. So now every time he flushed his toilet, his toilet backs up. So he just changed his cells. Well, that being where they put all the overflow mental people, they eventually put in a guy in there who's, I would say, is probably schizophrenic. Seriously, I mean, the guy never hardly ever came out of his cell. And they put a young man in with him who I would say was probably mentally retarded. Maybe it was, I have no reason, but he didn't even know how to take a shower. Some of the inmates had to basically tell him or show him and give him towels and stuff. Anyway, these two are get together in this cell, and the toilet's overflowing, and there is human feces on the floor of that cell for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. They finally moved the young man out into another cell where his cellmate complained so badly because he inability to shower and as filthy as he was. I don't even know where they moved him to. When I left, the guy with schizophrenia with the total mental break was still in there. They finally cleaned his cell out after 3 weeks. I had gone to the guards on that one. That's the one that made me angry with the COs because I'm like, and they're just like, yeah, we know he's down there. We know his condition. Well, then do something for God's sakes. Get a hold of a white shirt. I kind of got myself in a crack one day because one of the white shirts came in there and I started barking at him hard about it. I said, he's a human being. He's being treated like a freaking animal. I said, my livestock on my farm aren't treated like that. We clean the barn. This man, and finally they did clean out his cell, but he was still down in there. I know he hadn't taken a shower in probably 2 months because I don't think he cared because he's nuts, but he should not be there. He should have been in some other facility. And that's just one example of two guys that were down there. The worst probably case, but there were other instances I could tell you about, but I wouldn't want to just beat that particular horse to death.
Wow, ROCKNE, man, this is Amazing and sad information. Amazing and sad information. Is there anything that we didn't touch upon that's worth talking about before we wrap up this episode?
Uh, I'd like to do another one with you about my Russian celly and how hard he is being crushed by the DOJ right now for probably crimes he did not commit. And again, they'll try to keep him in there for as long as they can till he takes the plea. But he's got a wife and young children. He's got 4 children, and he doesn't need to be in. He should at least be out pre-trial, so he can prepare for trial. And there's no reason for him to be in there.
I mean,
It's just, again, they keep people in forever and just try to wear them down because they got nothing but time, and it's your time in jail.
I mean, what could you tell us a brief about him? What his deal is? I mean, because we know all about.
Okay, he's 44 years old and from Siberia, but probably I think at least 20 years ago he started working more in China and eventually Hong Kong, doing manufacturing of computer processing boards, and he had his own factory over there, maybe a couple of them. He changed facilities from time to time, depending on if he's in Sichuan or Hong Kong, because political climate changed. And then eventually the COVID hit, and that really changed things for him. That's what he decided to pull up stakes. But the boards he makes are in almost everything you probably use, or boards just like it. In your smart TV, in your refrigerator, the motor control boards, they run almost, I have them in my sauna, but just they run almost everything in our life that has a computer board in it. Those are what he made, and he sold them worldwide. And he moved to United States in 2022, a couple months after the invasion of Ukraine. Well, he's Russian, but his wife is Ukrainian. And actually, his grandparents were deported from Ukraine to Siberia by Stalin. So he's basically Ukrainian too. But while in the States, he's tried to start up his manufacturing again, and just wanted to where he could be free. And he didn't have to worry about the politics of China and what they're doing there. But he just wanted to be in a safer environment for his children. And so he started buying the components and shipping them to Hong Kong for manufacturing and building these little processing boards. And he had, I think, the one order that was first flagged, there were 60 chips on there that Homeland Security flagged that were banned under the sanctions, is not to be sold to Russia. And anyway, long and short of it, they said he's supplying Russian military with drones, helping them build drones, this, that. And anyway, it's their usual overblown indictments. And like you said, he has sold hundreds of thousands of these things, over the last, 15 years, 20 years. And to get him for 60 chips at they're like $10 a piece is what, the first thing they flagged on. And then everything got shipped, and they said he's, selling them to Russia. Well, he's building them. He's sending those to Hong Kong to make boards. He didn't even know where they're going to be sold to. He had to make them first. Anyway, that's his situation. That's where he's at. And he has some other interests that he wants to start manufacturing things in the United States as well, because the boards that he makes, those processing boards, are also used in a lot of medical devices, holistic, naturopathic medical devices, as well as EKG machines, EEGs, respirators. They're used in all kinds of medical devices, but he had a specific line of devices he wanted to make, and he was actually had some of the parts and things being sent, what he needed to start manufacturing were on the docks in Siberia to be shipped to where he lived in Florida to start manufacturing. He didn't have the facility set aside and lined out. And then that's when he was arrested. So it's a sad story in a way. He's a very sharp guy. He's the one that, I'll say, he saved my life. He got me out of that cell, that hot box, and I said I was breaking down. And I've met the wall a couple times while going through training in my life, at various times. And I know when I see the wall coming at me, and the wall was coming at me, and I was trapped in a cell. And he got me to the other side where it was cooler.
Wow.
Much cooler.
Wow.
He's a good man. And he does, and I just, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I mean, these victimless crimes are just, shouldn't all these statutory victimless crimes just be removed? And we got to get back to common law. I mean, what's your thoughts about that? Because you're putting good men in prison
Well,
for really doing nothing.
I'm a firm believer in going back to common law versus British maritime law.
Yeah, it's British maritime law. I mean, after we won the Revolutionary War, they got us through the practice of law. Every American is a potential victim of British maritime law. I mean, that's the way I see it. I see it in the, they talk, oh, there's all this prejudice, or at least was back in the Black community. I mean, that all stems from maritime law. You look at what they've done to all of our communities, that all seems to stem from maritime law, like needlessly torturing people. I mean, at least to my eyes.
Yeah, but I can't really speak with authority. I know the difference between the two, but I'll probably make myself sound foolish if I try to debate it. But I just, yeah, we have a system that's rather broken. I mean, it truly is. Two books somebody should read, obviously, I think, was a book by Howell Woltz called Justice Denied. It's his story as somebody who was drugged through the system. When I was reading it, I'm just like reading. It's like, oh, it sounds like it was my experience as he went through the jails, the county jails, the lawyers, and his experience with the DOJ and a very, very crooked U.S. attorney down in North Carolina. And the other one is obviously 3 felonies a day.
How we're all committing 3 felonies a day under statutory maritime laws.
Yes. And it basically, that's, like I said, it's kind of the pattern that the Soviet Union used. Yevgeny Beria, head of the NKVD under Joseph Stalin, as he said, show me the man, I'll find you the crime, is based off the premise of there's so many regulations that are, and not laws. I mean, a regulation is not a law, but they enforce it like it's a law because only law can be passed by Congress, not bureaucrats. Yep. And that's exactly what they use. And it's like, oh, you broke a law. No, I just, broke a regulation or ignored a regulation. That's not law, but it's, enforced at the barrel of a gun, and you end up in jail. And like they say, we all probably break at least 3 a day.
I mean, for the viewers out there, I'm sure you've heard me talk about the legal societies and blah, blah, blah. It's very simple. Every single one of us is committing 3 felonies a day according to statutory law, which is all this stuff where nobody's getting hurt, but somehow you're breaking the law and it's a felony, and you could be put in jail really for the rest of your life for some of this stuff. I mean, the way they got it rigged, so
or financially ruined,
or
all the above.
Yeah. All important things that we need to fix now that we have an opportunity here with this new administration. That's why we're going here, in the kitchen, by the way. We're in the kitchen of a small apartment in Washington, D.C., because that's where we got to be at to really push the envelope and reverse all this nonsense, like everything that, ROCKNE, you're talking about. I mean, this is like, we are all at risk. And you think you're not, right? And you got 2 people sitting here, one guy that just spent 7.5 months in jail, another guy that was accused of being an assassin because he's a, lawful gun carrier. You know what I mean? So you just don't know when it's going to happen. And then it happens. And then you wish you had done something about it.
Yeah. And it happens so slowly, it seemed like over time, this country just kind of slowly went down that primrose path. But one thing I'll say about already the Trump administration, what they're doing with the DOJ, they're doing some serious house cleaning already. I mean, and they need to get rid of these career prosecutors. The thing is, the prosecutors, there are bonuses paid, and this is God's honest truth, bonuses paid for the number of plea bargains.
Yep. Oh, you cut out. Hello? Well, what happened? ROCKNE, you cut out. I can't hear you. Oh, no. Sorry about this, guys. He can't hear me for some reason. The audio just cut out for some reason. That's really weird. Hang on. I got to call him. Sorry about that, guys. He's going to think like, what's going on?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry, brother. But like about 20 seconds ago, your audio cut out. We can't hear you, but I got you right next to my speaker here. In case we could just finish it off on audio here, because it seems as though remember the issue we were having earlier? It just came back.
Okay, well, just
probably wrap it up anyway, but I just want to say about what I was saying about the prosecutors. Federal prosecutors are given bonuses based on the number of plea bargains they can get, because that saves the system a lot of money. And they're also given bonuses that's factored in with the number of years of sentencing that they can get in court against the defendants.
Yeah.
Which is why they're so underhanded and literally dishonest and a bunch of shysters as far as offering a plea deal. Like Matthew Perna, the J6 who committed suicide, was told if he took the plea deal, he'd get 3 years. And as soon as he signed it, they said, oh, when they got his pre-sentencing report, it saw on there's terrorist enhancements and all that kind of things they wanted to throw at him to up his points departure.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, he's looking at 12 years, and he went on his garage and hung himself.
Wow.
You know,
wow.
I mean, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's not justice.
Yeah.
I mean,
so ridiculous.
And that man did nothing, but he walked in one door down the hallway and out the other. For that, he ended up taking his own life.
Yep.
And I hope, I mean, God will judge. God is our final judge. Everything we do on here is a struggle, a battle, and we do everything for the glory of God. You know, and I've kept that in mind through this entire journey. And that's one thing I'll say about having been in you know, the time I spent in the Gulag. It gave me a lot of time to reflect on myself and my own Christianity. And it's made me a stronger Christian, a better person. And I'm hoping time will be the judge. I'm a much better father and husband. So I think I was all right beginning with, but I think you gave me different perspective. But, you know, it's just God is our final judge.
Mm-hmm.
And these people, you know, they better, you know, change their tune or they're not going to like the final outcome.
Yep.
All those prosecutors and all high and mighty judges that sit on the benches.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we at the Blood Money podcast, you know, this issue we've been dealing with, you know, listening to, you know, seeing, for example, a sheriff that's doing some very bad things, you know, with what happened with this guy calling me an assassin. And then you like research who the DA is and you see that they're in cahoots, which is a conflict of interest. And this is an issue that you see so many cities across, you know, the country and so many counties around the country where they're really working together in terms of the parties that are supposed to be keeping checks and balances over one another, you know?
While the defense attorneys work right with them.
Yep, exactly.
Whether they're public defenders or they're taking money, private attorneys, they'll take your money all day long, and that's all they're working for is a plea deal. They don't want to go to court.
Exactly.
That's work, man. They don't want to do the work. They just want to take your $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 and say thank you.
Yeah. And in the process, you're tortured as a human. Like your freedom's taken, which is terrorism, and then for you to buy your freedom back, you have to pay for it, which is kind of like basically a classic terroristic activity. If you're allowed to take a hostage and then have to pay for you to be free, ransom, you know, and that is, but that they call it law, you know, in Congress, they call bribery lobbying, you know, so I think part of this is us taking, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the words that they use. It's like they're committing the same crimes that on the streets you do decades in jail for, but they give it a different name and, you know, this kind of like, you know, nice sounding, you know, name. And that's it. They get away with it. So anyway, it's enough's enough. And I think we're at the cusp of huge changes in this country. And we just got to keep calling these people out, you know? Yeah.
I pray.
Yeah, I pray too.
But, you know, like old saying, don't worry about tomorrow. God's already there.
Yep. Exactly, sir. Exactly. Any other words before we wrap it up?
No, that's like I said, I'd like to, if you ever want to do another one on the other topic, that'd be great. Other than that, I appreciate you having me on. Let me voice my opinion. Hopefully they make some changes in the DC Gulag, like I said, in all the jails. One last thing I'll say, having talked to a lot of these guys who have been in different jails, county jails and or prisons around the country, as bad as the DC Gulag was, they said, a lot of worse places than this.
Yeah.
A lot worse places.
Yeah.
You know, so these people, a lot of them, they're not treated like human beings.
No.
You know, they may have committed a crime and they're serving a sentence, but they should still be treated as human beings.
Yeah. And guys like you never committed any crime and you weren't treated like human beings, and shame on us, really shame on us for allowing for it to have gotten that bad. But justice, I think, is around the corner, man. Any legal actions, by the way? Are you planning on taking any legal actions against these guys?
Well, they're brewing out there. Will I be a part of it? I don't know. You know, I'm just glad to be out here with my family.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
at this point, that's where my head's at. You know, even just doing the podcast today was kind of like, man, I feel fried.
Yeah.
You know, my brain's not where it's at. Whether it's excessive heat fried some circuits on me, truly, or if it's just kind of decompressing right now. You know, just we'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of talk about them, and there's a lot of guys that deserve it.
Yeah. No.
They destroyed a lot of lives.
Yep. You deserve. I mean, all you guys deserve justice, and hopefully, you'll all be millionaires, and you'll never have to worry about just working a day in your life. So you could just, you know, you deserve it. I mean, you've been through trauma and horror. That's probably why it's, you know, hard adjusting, and it feels like you're a little fried. But trauma does that, you know.
Yeah, it does.
All right.
Yes, it does.
All right, Rock.
Well, Vim, I do.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate it, man.
Yep.
God bless. Work on getting the rest of those guys out.
Yep. Yep.
Man, they're still holding hostages.
Yep. Yep.
Jeremy Brown and Taylor Toronto and Box and Ball. And, you know, yeah. Mittendorf, another one.
Yeah.
I'm not going to remember one off the top of my head.
Well, we're going to be finding out. We thought the last ones were released, but I think it was the last ones out of the Gulag jail, or they were transported or whatever. Or
that was probably Olivia Pollock and Joseph Hutchins.
We're the last ones from there.
I think so.
But there's other
prisoners is still in there. There's talk he was coming out because, again, it was, you know, it was a misdemeanor, something from back in his state. You know, not even extraditable.
Yeah. Wow.
But they had to give it a shot of leaving there for 3 more days, you know, because they could.
They're such bastards. They're such bastards, you know. You know, for the viewers out there, you know, we've been like interviewing people as they're coming out, and you know, one of the guys told us that one of the guards felt compelled to tell him that he ends up back in prison or dead. I mean, some of these people are just demons. You know, they just want to hurt. They just want to cause harm. You know, even after the pardons, they're trying to stretch it out and make people's lives difficult. But yep, what could you do? You know, evil individuals. But anyway, sir, anything else, ROCKNE, or?
Nope.
All right.
God bless America. God bless Trump. God bless you. You know?
God bless you, sir. And for the viewers out there, thank you for joining us for this Blood Money episode. As you know, we haven't done many Blood Money episodes lately because we've been very busy. We've been very busy, not only in D.C. with this new administration. Check out my Not Them Miller X account where I'm posting a lot of stuff as it happens. The unedited raw stuff goes on Not Them Miller often on my X account. Also, check us out on AmericaHappens.com, where you got access to all of our socials, especially our Rumble channel. And we'll be back with more Blood Money episodes. We'll be back with a ton of content. I will see you all on the next episode of Blood Money. And seems like we're in DC for a little bit. So we're going to be doing a lot of stuff in DC this week with the RFK Jr. hearing, Tulsi Gabbard, also Kash Patel. So again, for that stuff, the quickest, you know, instant posts go on Not Them Miller on X. And beyond that, expect to see stuff on our Rumble and also our America Happens One X account. All right, guys, I will see you all on the next episode of Blood Money. Take care.